Thank you for joining us today. I'm Emma Nguyen, Head of Marketing Asia Pacific. We're delighted to welcome back Talane to present today's Success Series webinar, Managing Up, How to Have an Effective Relationship with Your Boss, Part 2. Talane is the founder of lifecoach.com and she is an international best-selling author, speaker and coach. To view our upcoming events, jobs, career advice and blogs, please visit morganmckinley.com. I'd like to run through some housekeeping tips before we start. We will be recording this webinar and it will be available on our YouTube channel by searching Morgan McKinley Recruitment, or please visit our website. Questions will also be taken via the question or chat feature on your webinar control panel. We hope you enjoyed the webinar and please join the conversation on Twitter at Morgan McKinley using hashtag Success Series and hashtag Career Ally. I'd like to tell you more about our very special presenter, Talane. As mentioned before, Talane is the owner and founder of lifecoach.com. She is a successful author, speaker and master certified coach. She has published 3 international bestsellers, including Coach Yourself to Success, The Secret Laws of Attraction, The Effortless Way to Get the Relationship That You Want, and her latest book, Coach Yourself to a New Career. I'm really pleased to introduce you to Talane. Talane, hello, how are you? Welcome back.
I'm great. Well, thanks very much. Thanks so much for having me back. And I'm glad we've got some people interested in coming back for more conversations on this. We also had a whole bunch of really excellent questions and some really tough questions too. So we're going to try to work those into the topic today and cover those as we go along. I'm going to whiz through just because some people might be new. This is part 2 of, because there's just so much content basically, I couldn't cram it all in into 1 hour. So we're going to just, some of the stuff we covered, like we talked about why people might hire a coach. We talked about what coaching is. So I'm going to just skip over these. And we talked about why people manage up. And we talked about that in part 1. So you can, I believe, listen to that first part of the Managing Up webinar, you know, at your leisure. So whenever it's convenient if you missed it. But anyway, we did talk about why it's important to manage up and that you do need to take control of the relationship you have with your boss. So I'm not going to go into more detail on that since we've covered that already. And then we're talking about these are all the areas to address in not only just managing up, but becoming a really extraordinary and exceptional employee who gets promoted. And so that's where, you know, if you're going to be working in a corporation, you might as well, you know, make as much money as you can, and hopefully you enjoy your work, and you know, but definitely, you know, you should always be looking for opportunities to make as much money as you can, to get promoted, to get recognition, and to work your way up to the top levels of the company, because once you break through that glass ceiling into the corporate level, executive level, there's massive perks and benefits. So it's well worth going for it, you know, and certainly giving that a shot. So these are all the kinds of things that I work on with my own corporate and executive coaching clients. In our company, we help people get through that upper level, and what it takes there is most people actually now have their own coaches who are trying to break through at those levels because it's really hard to do. So everything you know, no matter what level you are in the company, all this basic stuff, communication skills, things that you can use, not just at work, but also at home too. So don't be afraid to use some of this stuff at home. So we talked mainly about managing up and a little bit about the healthy boundaries last time. So I'm going to whiz right through. We went through this checklist last time, so I'm just going to skip over that. And we talked some about the boundaries, but there's one piece that I missed out that's really, really important in terms of managing up and managing anyone. And it's about having boundaries in place. And boundaries are just what people can't do to you or around you anymore. So if people are annoying you, it could be a colleague or a boss, and somebody does something that you don't like, and it's really annoying you, what it means is that you're missing the boundary. So it's not that they're an annoying person, although it might seem that way. It's actually your own inadequate boundaries that are the problem. So when we can start to take responsibility for what occurs around us and realize that, if I'm annoyed by this, perhaps I need to sort out my own boundaries. It puts things in a different perspective. Instead of thinking, oh, it's that person who's the problem, we start to think about, okay, well, how is it that my inadequate boundaries are allowing this to occur? So you can take responsibility for other people's actions around you. It's not usually how we approach things. Much more empowering to do it this way because, you know, in one sense, we actually can't control what other people do. And even with the boundaries, you know, people may or may not respect or honor your boundaries. But it's worth giving it a shot And more often than not, we don't. So I'll just give you I think we talked a little bit about time. But let's see, I think, did I tell you the story about when I was working in my own manager? I used to work at Chase Manhattan Bank in New York City, and my own manager at one point scheduled a meeting with one of my staff members and didn't tell me. And so the staff member is leaving the office, and I'm saying, hey, where are you going? Oh, well, I have a meeting with so-so, the big boss. And I said, oh, all right, obviously I'm not going to say no. She's got to go to this meeting. But I needed to do something about that. And so I realized, okay, I could get really annoyed at my boss for just being a bit insensitive to my own needs as a manager to manage my team. But I need to take responsibility for that and let her know. So the key is, how do you let your boss know without aggravating your boss? Because they're in charge of your paycheck, obviously. So the key to doing that is the 4-step communication model. And the 4 steps are very simple but extremely powerful. So first of all, I'd look at what the boundary is. So the boundary is, people can't schedule my staff without letting me know. So they can't make appointments with my team without advising me first. So that needs to be the boundary. And you can make up any boundaries you want. You can make up boundaries like, people can't waste my time. People can't yell at me. People can't make me work in the evenings. People can't make me work on a weekend. You can have any boundaries you want. But again, we'll talk about corporate culture and fitting in and what the deal you signed up to as well. So sometimes, for example, if you worked in a New York law firm, people in New York law firms typically work 90 hours a week as a minimum. So you say you're not going to work evenings. Well, don't sign up to work in a New York law firm. Go to a small town and work there. It's just there's a cultural thing that you've signed up for if you're doing it in particular firms. So being cognizant of what you've signed up for in the first place is important as well. So going back to the 4 steps, the first step is inform. And inform is just done in a flat, neutral tone of voice, like you would say, the sky is blue. Do you realize you're late for this meeting? Just like that, flat, neutral, no judgment, no sarcasm, no righteousness, just completely flat. So something like this. When I had to tell my boss, basically what I did, I thought, okay, well, I need to tell her something. I mean, you want to stick with inform first. And just informing is holding up a mirror so that you can reflect back what's happened without judgment. You're 10 minutes late. That's it, just informing the facts. What's happened here? You're yelling at me. Do you realize you've raised your voice? Do you realize you've interrupted me? I like to start with, do you realize? Because then people could say, oh no, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize I raised my voice. Of course not. I know you'd always want to respect me. So then you reinforce the positive behavior that you want and give them that graceful exit. So when I'm talking to my boss, I had to say something like this. So I basically told her, I said, it would be easier for me to manage my team if I know when they're having an appointment with you. And that's all I said. And that was it. I didn't have to make a big hairy deal about it. I just said that, and had to call her up and let her know. And then she never, she didn't say anything, and she never did that again. So it was very easy I needed to enforce that boundary, otherwise she wouldn't respect me. Also, I needed to have that boundary in place, otherwise I couldn't run my business. I couldn't manage my team properly, not knowing where they are. So that was it. And inform is usually all we ever have to do, a good 95% of the time. And that's the first step in the 4-step model. The second step is to move it up a notch to request. And that looks like, I ask that you let me know before you schedule an appointment with my team. Just that, again, neutral tone of voice, or I request that you let me know if you're going to schedule. So if they didn't get it inform, sometimes we have to take it up a notch. You might want to inform a couple of times first and then say, hey, look, I request. And then the third step is to demand or insist. And that's a requirement. So it's like, I require, or I need this. This is an absolute requirement for me to manage my team properly. And that you rarely have to go to insist or demand, but it's good to have. And especially with children. I've got 2 kids. And I can tell you, kids will take you through all 4 steps every single time. They want to make sure you've got some teeth to this proposition, to whatever your boundary you're trying to enforce. And so they'll take you through all 4 all the time. Grown-ups, usually you only have to go through inform and request, again, in that neutral tone of voice. But kids will take you to step 3, which is to demand or insist. So I insist that you pick up your toys now. And then they'll want to know what the teeth are. So this is where you need some consequences. And that could look something like, say you're meeting somebody and they show up late. You can say, I'll wait 15 minutes, and after that, I'll be leaving. So those are your consequences, and you've got to have some teeth to them. But most of the time, you don't have to. Now, consequences that I might have with my boss, I had no idea about that. So thankfully, she got it at step 1, and I never even had to go to step 2. And most of the time, you never do. But you might want to think about what the consequences would be. And with children, you definitely better know ahead of time what the consequences will be, and they should have some real teeth and some bite to them. So think through that model. And then the 4th step is actually to leave. And sometimes we leave temporarily in a situation where we might say, look, I'm going to hang up the phone, and when we can speak to each other in a calm tone of voice, we'll carry on with this conversation. So sometimes we leave temporarily. I'm just going to leave the room and go off for a few minutes. That's fine. And sometimes if somebody consistently can't respect or honor your boundaries, you need to leave the relationship or leave the job. So if there is no change, then you may need to actually leave that job. And I've had clients who've done that. And the great thing about the boundaries is that I've never seen anyone punished for enforcing their boundaries if they use the neutral tone of voice. And sometimes people have chosen to leave jobs or relationships, and there's the pain and the loss of that initially. But after a bit, they find that they then attract a better relationship, a better boss, a better company. And so I've never actually seen anybody go worse. So the great thing about boundaries is once you have them in place and you've used this 4-step model, the universe tends to reward you with something better. So it's worth having these in place. And the other reason it is critical for you to get through. You will not break through the glass ceiling if you do not have firm and clear boundaries. If you are a doormat, you will not get promoted. And that's that. Doormats simply get walked on. They don't get promoted. So although it's really scary to put in place these boundaries and use this 4-step model, it's actually the key element to getting promoted and to breaking through to the top levels in a corporation. You absolutely must have boundaries. All right? And it's key to relationships as well, in our personal relationships, because the boundaries are what hold the love in a relationship. In a corporate environment, they hold the respect. And in a personal and intimate relationship, the boundaries are what contain the respect and the love as well. Because if you don't respect your partner, it's hard to be in love with them. All right, so that's a little bit on the healthy boundaries here. Really, really critical to have those in place. You cannot succeed as a doormat for long. You won't get promoted. So take a look and see what are the 10 boundaries you'd like to install. Practice on your friends and family first so you can get that neutral tone of voice. I do have on my website at lifecoach.com, we do have an audio. I go through that 4 steps in an audio form, so you can hear this again if you should ever need it. So feel free to do that as well and use that as a resource. All right, and I'll move on then. So teamwork. This is always usually a big area in teams. I think some of these are self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go into depth on all of them. But the one that I see consistently, number 2, the team is set up to maximize strengths, not weaknesses. Now, I see this a lot of times in corporate settings where the team is set up around weaknesses. And for some reason, there's this idea that we need to develop our weaknesses. And most of the time, actually, you shouldn't try to develop your weaknesses. You should develop your strengths and really get good at something and master something. Developing weaknesses is often a waste of time. So now there is a bit of damage control that needs to be done. If your weakness is going to take you out of the game and get you fired, yeah, you need to do some damage control there. But ideally, if it's your weakness, you need to delegate it to somebody else, not try to do it yourself. Because we all have pretty much some hardwired brain abilities, and some things we'll just never really be that good at. So we all have to work on damage control as well, because if it's that bad of a weakness that'll take you out of the company, yeah, you could actually lose your job. So it's hard for me to say you can't look at your weaknesses. You need to be aware of them, and you need to manage them so that you're not being responsible for something that's a major weakness. All right? So the team, ideally, should be mixed up of different people who have different strengths and weaknesses so that they can help each other. And as a team, it's the differences in the team that actually make people more successful as a team. That's why we need teams, is because we all see things in a different way. Our brains work in different ways, and we can leverage that in a team environment. And again, going back down to but number 9, only work on projects that weren't a team. Sometimes committees are put together that one person could do perfectly well. It's a waste of other people's time to have a team around something that doesn't need a team. So take a look at that too. That can just be a big time waster. Not every project needs a team. All right, so to set up the maximize the strengths, there are, we use, in our company, we actually use some pretty sophisticated computerized assessments to actually look at what people's hardwired abilities are and what their inherent personal style is. And when we use these, because we had a question about somebody who had 10 new staff who wanted to push sales and cut the waste on the staff. If I were put in charge of 10 new people, the first thing I would do is have them take these assessments, because it can save a good 6 months to a year's worth of time. You'll immediately get to know what people's strengths and weaknesses are. You'll get to know what their style is. It's very easy. You can immediately spot the salesperson's style, what makes a good salesperson. That shows right up on these assessments. It's not a mystery at all. And the values even, the motivating values of a salesperson, they're usually motivated by incentives, by money for the most part. So those make good salespeople. They're motivated by financial incentives, and they love schmoozing and chatting with people and building relationships, and they're usually friendly and warm. And so that, again, can be seen immediately, and you can see what the team's strengths are, who should be making the sales calls, who should be doing the detail work or the analysis, and really get up to speed quickly on that. So again, if I had any sort of new team to manage, I would use some tools to speed that whole process up. But if you can arrange to do that, that will save you a load of time in terms of becoming a very up-to-speed manager. Because it takes time sometimes to get to know people. I've worked with coaching clients, and we shave a good 6 months off of the coaching time needed because of these assessments. You can learn so much about yourself. All right, so if you look at your teams, so the other interesting thing is when we do these programs with teams, what I've noticed is that people start to appreciate the things that used to annoy them about the other people. Because this is how I always works with things. The things that make people different, we always feel most comfortable with people who are like us. This whole, we do like to be around people who are like us. Short people tend to hang around short people. Tall people tend to have tall friends. People get married at the same cultural and economic background more often than not. So it's this likeness makes us feel more comfortable with people. And the differences, different styles, particularly personality styles, can really rub us the wrong way and irritate and annoy us. And, that person's really annoying. No, I don't like that person. Wish they weren't on the team. And what happens is when you start to realize that it's precisely those differences that make that person a valuable team player. We're bound to be most annoyed by the people who are least like us. And that's why they need to be on the team. Because if you're the optimist, that pessimist is going to be really annoying, but they're going to be seeing the flaws. They're going to say, oh, well, you didn't think of this, and pointing out the flaws. And that's really important. So as part of a team, we need to, the very things that most annoy us, we suddenly start to appreciate. And when we use these in teams, people start to, it completely changes the attitude of a team that's dysfunctional, because they start to realize, hey, I need this person on the team because they're the ones who's going to see the flaw in this that I might miss. All right, so, well, everybody, the pessimists are very, very valuable, and we may not always be the most pleasant because they can bring out the negative things that we don't want to look at, but very, very helpful and useful. I think at this point we should take a quick break to see if there's any questions that have come in, because I know I've covered the boundaries thing. Is usually, people usually have some questions on that. Have we any questions come in, Emma? Not yet.
And yes, we do actually. We've got plenty of questions coming through, so thanks everyone for seeing them through. I've got one here, which let me just open that up and let you know. So we have one from Alicia from Australia, actually. She asked, when a relationship breaks down to a point where respect between parties is lost, what are some of the key strategies employers could use to ensure the work still gets done? How do you engage your boss to assist you and be supportive?
So yeah, that's a really, those are tough questions, aren't they? So
yeah, they are.
Breaking down. Yeah, boss is not being supportive, and again, if you can take a look at starting to appreciate people. I mean, this is the, again, I don't have all the details of the situation, and it's probably worth a full coaching call to sort that out fully and really get the situation under control. But when teams are breaking down, it's usually because they're not appreciating the differences. Sometimes it's because they feel that other people in the team aren't carrying their weight. If you don't feel you have a supportive boss, again, I would go back in and make some strong requests. So if there's something you need from your manager, you may need to go right in there and make a really direct request and say, in order for me to get this project done, this is what I'm going to need. 1, 2, 3. Or, you might have to say, I'm going to need you to back me up on this in front of XYZ. Will you be able to do that? And really make some direct requests of your boss. And in order for this project to succeed and for our team to be successful, this is what we're going to need. And my husband's an executive coach as well, and he specializes in going into teams and working on breakdowns in teams and when people are completely deadlocked. And what he does is looks at telling the truth about what's going on. What's actually, and people actually starting to say, well, this person's not carrying their weight, and and really saying, well, I'm not doing this, and people starting to be responsible for what their own role in this team is and what they've agreed to do or not agreed to do and where things are breaking down. So it really starts with telling the truth. It helps to have an outside facilitator because, of course, if a team is dysfunctional and the manager's not able to sort it out, sometimes you need somebody from the outside who's not attached to the situation and can be an objective person to just come in and sort stuff out. So if you truly have a dysfunctional team, I'd recommend getting in some outside help, because you may, if it's gone that far and your boss is not supportive or willing or able to sort the thing out himself or herself, then you may need some outside help on that, and it's worth doing. So unless the team's not doing a valuable project, then it doesn't matter. But usually it's something important. So good.
I actually have another one. Yes, I have one from Andrew, actually. He's just chatted to us via the control panel. And he asked, hi, Talane. He says, hi. Is there a specific group of people? This is relating back to the team checklist, Talane. Is there a specific group of people that these techniques work for? That is, for example, will it have similar effect on managers who are from different backgrounds, so Westerners versus traditional Chinese? Do you have any, any feedback on that question?
Yeah, and that came up in working in multicultural environments, and the key thing with that, again, is respect. It's about respecting different cultures and that people might have a different style. And it actually doesn't matter. I was in New York and talk about multicultural melting pot. We get every single type of culture there in the world is in New York City. So, the key thing again is being aware that there's differences. And if people have something that's important to them, like this is a special holiday for me, or they need to let people know. You mustn't assume that people understand your background. And once you realize that, hey, it's not personal, it's just their style or it's just their culture, and that's okay. You don't have to fight all that stuff. Just recognize. And sometimes it's about calling it on it and say, look, I know your style would be like this, or in your culture we do like that, but when we go into this meeting, we're going to need to adapt because these people have a different style or a different culture, and so we need to present this a little differently than we would normally. Sometimes you need to just adapt. And I've coached people all over the world in every different country in the world. And the great thing is we're all human beings. At the core, we're all human beings. And this basic communication stuff works in every culture. The 4-step model, it works in every culture. So I've never seen it fail in any different person that it works. It always works if you use that neutral tone of voice. And you might need to say, sometimes it's about telling people, you're right. Sometimes we have to grant bosses permission to be right. So we'll get onto this bit about needs, but sometimes people need to know that they're right or they're the boss. And so if you don't want to be careful you're not usurping them or taking away their control or their power. You want to let them know, hey, you're the boss. And to do that, again, inform generally works well. And saying things like, in order for me to get the best work done or to do my best work or for this team to produce this result, this is what we need. And then usually people are pretty responsive. because they want things to be successful. Your boss wants the project to work out. So it's, try using those 4 steps. I've never seen it fail. As long as, again, it's the neutral tone of voice. If you start to get judgmental or sarcastic, or there's a little bit of edge to it, then it's not neutral, then it can fail on you. Then it can backfire. So that's what I'm saying, practice with some friends and family first. But yeah, there's different cultures, and you will have to, I was just thinking about showing up, and I was doing a seminar in Spain once, and they have a lateness culture where it's kind of okay to be late. So sometimes you just have to go with the flow and realize, okay, well, we're not going to start on time. Everybody's still drinking their coffee. and going with that instead of fighting it and saying, okay, well, we're going to all do it on time. Or, just like, okay, well, all right, we'll just start a little later. And I'll just chill out for a bit and chat with some people in the room who are there and not worry about it. So there are going to be cultural differences, and sometimes it's not worth, trying to fight those. Sometimes it's better to go with the flow. All right, let's move through to personal balance. And this brings right up to what I was just talking about. Don't try to get, I'm not going to go through all these, some rewarding life outside of work. Well, that's easy for you to figure out. Do something fun. Iron a coach. But I don't try to get love or personal needs met at work. This one's a really, really big one. And it ties in with, I know where I am along the path of personal development. This is about getting our personal and emotional needs met. And if you look at the path of personal development, I think of probably the best example of saying that, how do you grow and develop as a human being. A guy named Abraham Maslow figured this out, at least the basics of it, with his hierarchy of needs. And he pretty much said we have this hierarchy, and all human beings, regardless of culture or country, go through this hierarchy. And the first is survival needs. So that comes first. So if we're really scared, if we're scared we're going to lose our jobs, if we're in fear, we're in survival mode. And that's where we feel stress. If we're struggling with survival, struggling to pay the bills, worried about losing our job, very, very stressful because we're in survival mode. We're very in fear, basically. After that, we go to the second level. So once you've handled survival and you feel pretty comfortable about things and you're not worried about losing your job and you've got plenty of food to eat, a house to, shelter to live in, it's all that stuff. You've got that sorted. Food, shelter, clothing's all sorted. And we use a checklist called the Clean Sweep program to see how well you're doing in the survival area, because modern-day survival is pretty complicated. You have to pay taxes and go to the doctor and get checkups and all sorts of stuff. So it's more complicated now with modern-day survival, but nonetheless, it's a checklist for how well you're handling that. In fact, we can probably send that out to you. The second one, and it's on my website, it's called the Clean Sweep program, so it's at lifecoach.com. The second thing after you've handled survival is our personal and emotional needs. So you'll see this happen where, for example, men get stabilized in their careers, and once they've done that, then they start thinking, oh, I can now pop the question. So the emotional needs come next, but they kind of want to get survival handed first, and then they're, okay, well, now I can sort out the emotions. And so that's where, the needs, for example, to be loved, the need to be appreciated, the need to be heard, the need to be understood, the need to be liked, the need to be right, the need to be in control. So those are just a few examples of about 100 different needs. And it's very critical in a working environment to know what your needs are and get them met at home, not at work, because you don't want to show up as being needy, because we know neediness is ultimately repellent. We run from people who appear needy to us. We don't attract the things that we want. We don't attract the success, the promotions, the jobs, etc., if we come across in any way as being needy. So you really want to get your needs met at home, not at work, from friends and family who already love and care about you. And you might say, oh, yeah, well, I know my family loves me, blah, blah, blah. But do you know what your top 4 personal and emotional needs are? Can you just rattle them off? I mean, most people know they need to be loved in some version of that, but is it to be cherished or treasured or adored? What's exactly how you want to be loved or appreciated? So going through that quiz, and don't do it now. We have a free quiz. It's on the Life Coach called Raise Your Emotional IQ. It's free. It takes about 20 minutes, so don't do it right now. But when you have some time in the evening, you might want to take that quiz and find out what your own top 4 needs are, because it takes 20 minutes because we're sorting out over 100 different needs and thinking out which are your 4 top ones that you can address. Because if you don't know what your needs are, it's actually pretty hard to fulfill them. And people run around doing all sorts of crazy things subconsciously to try to fulfill their personal and emotional needs. Again, it's really critical for being successful at work. and helpful in terms of managing your boss. Because once you start to identify your own needs and can realize how you might be trying to get your needs met at work, and that might be clashing with your boss. We had a question about what happens when you come to personal clashes with your boss. Most of the time, there's two reasons why we have personal clashes. One is because they have a different style than us. So their style might be perhaps brusque and to the point and very direct, and maybe you have a warmer, more friendly style or a different style, or you're more focused on details and your boss isn't. Again, those styles we can sort out with the assessments. But the different styles can create a clash because, again, we don't feel comfortable with people with a different style. And on that, I want to say, if your boss is the sort of brusque and to the point person and has a sort of a demanding style, you can go head-to-head with them. Don't be afraid of them. They don't realize that they come across as a bit scary, so don't be so afraid of them. Go right in there and duke it out with them. They'll respect you for that. But do use a neutral tone of voice. And so where was I? So back to emotional needs. You want to make sure you're getting your own needs met, so that you're not going to be repelling the people that you most want to attract. You're not going to be missing out on opportunities to be promoted because of your unmet needs that you're not even aware of. So people don't think they're coming across as needy, but that you might be. And any unmet need will, at some level, be creating a neediness in you. It's very subtle, but we sense needs. We sniff them out. We don't necessarily can put a finger on them, but we can just sniff them out and feel them. So it's really, really helpful to be successful. I'm going to get all my clients to work on their personal and emotional needs, making sure that they're totally satisfied from friends and family at home. And you can then start to get them met at work. So, for example, I had a client who had a need for appreciation, and she could ask her boss and say, hey, tell me, what did you appreciate about this project that I just completed? You know, what do you appreciate about me as a team member? And then she got that feedback at work met as well. So it certainly is possible to do that. And coming out directly with it is actually much more attractive and appealing than sneaking around trying to get appreciation. It's one of those funny things. The more direct we are about our needs, the more confident we appear, as opposed to the reverse. I've got a whole book on this topic. It's actually called The Secret Laws of Attraction and How to Get the Relationship You Want, and it works for both career and personal relationships. So we go into great depth on that with what your needs are, boundaries, how to set those up. So if you feel that might be an area of development for you or an area to look at, and if you take that quiz and can't figure out what to do next, then that would be your next step. All right, let's move on through that. Self-management. This one's, I was on time. We talked, I think, about time in the first go-around. But I've mastered time management. The important stuff gets done well. This tip, I'm going to highlight this one out of the list here, because almost everybody feels like the original wording on was that it all gets done well, and I actually changed this so that it says the important stuff gets done well, because in this day and age, we actually can't get it all done. Most people can't. There's very, very few people who actually can get it all done well now. We have too much. We're in information overload. There's too many emails. There's just too much going on. So now, to be successful, you actually can't get it all done. You have to cherry pick what you will get done, or you'll never, because you're just never going to get it all done. Some stuff's going to have to be put aside. So in terms of picking out it's using that 80-20 rule that we get from 20% of our actions, we get 80% of the result. So you need to figure out very quickly what the 20% is that makes the difference and focus on that. And when you're new to a job, you kind of have to do everything and just work really, really hard until you figure out what's the 80-20, what's the 20% that matters. But I'm going to give you a tip that I share with my top executive clients that just helps them. It's a very simple way to figure out what the 80-20 is and sort that out. And it's based on, oddly enough, it's related to Stephen Covey's 4-quadrant time management theory of how to be successful. But it's actually 4 quadrants is kind of complicated, and to sit down and figure that out every day, I find that clients don't have time for that. So I've got it down to a real simple system. All you need to do to figure out the 80-20 is ask yourself 3 questions every day. And you might want to just jot these down. Number 1 is, what's important about today? And think about your whole day. You know, maybe it's your kid's birthday and you need to get home early. So what's important? Maybe you have an important meeting with your boss or an important call to make with a client. So that's the first question. Jot down everything that's truly important. And then the next question, number 2, what must get done today? And this is must, not what I'd like to get done, but what really truly must get done today. Absolutely has to. So put that down. And then the question 3, what's important about the future? Now, if you only focus on today, what happens is you can lose sight of, oh gosh, in 2 weeks I completely forgot I have this seminar to do. So you don't want to get caught short because you're so focused on today. So what's coming up down the road? Maybe in a month or 2, or there's some project you need to start planning for now so that it's ready 3 months from now. And it could even be the bigger future, that you want to start your own business or something, or have a family, or, so you need to start planning for that. So you can look at the near future and the bigger future. But the questions, the things that get down on the page, and do this newly every day, that's your focus. That's the 20% that really makes a difference. So if you're going to cherry pick and get the important stuff done, it helps to figure out what is the important stuff and actually think about that. And that way, at the end of the day, you may not have gotten through all your emails, but you'll have gotten through the important stuff. And you can go home in peace knowing I've accomplished something important today. I've gotten the important things. I may not have gotten everything done, but I got the stuff that matters done. And that alone helps so many people, because in this day and age where it's so frustrating, where there's so much to do and we can never get it all done in a day, we just can't. Most people just can't. And this is a really helpful way to know at least you're getting the important things done and focusing on what's important. And you'll find if you do that, you'll actually be more productive, because the 80% that doesn't matter often never needs to get done. That's a big surprise for people. Now, another one I'm going to just highlight here. If I find myself getting stopped or blocked, I ask for help. I had a coach, Thomas Leonard, who started coaching, actually, and he's brilliant. Unfortunately, he died quite young, but he was absolutely brilliant. And one of the things he said is that if he found himself getting stuck on something, and he'd give it 10 minutes, and if he couldn't figure it out after 10 minutes, he'd pick up the phone and call for help. So if he couldn't get his computer to work, he'd try to wrestle with it for 10 minutes, and then he'd call for help. If he couldn't, we just did that the other day, didn't we? Just call for help, because if you're not making headway on it, you probably aren't going to make headway on it. Pick up the phone and say, hey, do you know how to do this? Get some help. And talk to your colleague. Say, well, I'm not making any headway here. Do you know how to do this? Get some help. Don't waste time, because usually there'll be somebody out there who knows what to do. All right? So that's a little bit on self-management. Communication checklist. I want to talk about one that doesn't make any sense unless I explain it. So we spoke about the charge neutral voice versus charge up or down. So that's that the sky is blue voice. So if you not only use that to inform people to do your 4-step communication model, stick to the neutral voice there, but as well in anything that you say. So if you can just get in the habit of speaking in sort of a flat, neutral tone of voice, you'll find that people can hear you. And this is particularly helpful for women, because when women get excited about something, either angry or excited, their voices tend to go up. And when their voices go up, the men tend to tune them out. So, especially if they're angry, they'll just not hear you. So you want to keep really neutral. You can just clear, firm, and neutral in your voice and say things like a fact. All right? So that's that neutral tone of voice. Now, this one about I make my points quickly and powerfully. I use messages. A message is actually something we stole from the advertising world and use in the coaching world. Because in coaching, we need to be able to communicate, usually in a coaching call, the coach only has maybe 10 or 15 minutes to talk, or 10 minutes sometimes. And you want to get across all your wisdom and expertise and help this guy. And you want to leave them in a place where they're naturally motivated to take action and move forward in their life. So you want them to have what they need in terms of knowledge and information, as well as you want them to be motivated to take action. And so the way to do that is to use messages. And again, we took this from advertising, because advertisers have figured out that in a short commercial, which is often just a couple of seconds, they need to drop in some messages. And a message is something that sticks in your brain. So it's a statement of fact, it's a statement, and it'll go into somebody's head, and then you can't get it out. And jingles can be like that. Songs, you've heard a jingle or something, keeps going in your brain. Well, the advertisers have done a good job. They got that jingle implanted in your brain. But we can use this in communication as well, in our speaking. And this is how you can learn to speak so that others actually hear you and then take action on what you say. Really good skill to learn. Now, there's a lot to this, and I could spend easily an hour or a couple of weeks working on messaging with you, because it's an advanced coaching skill, and even coaches struggle to learn how to do it correctly. But I'm going to give you a shortened, kind of a short tip that I share with my clients, and obviously I work in more depth with people individually, but just so that I can give you something now to help you with the messages. The secret, or one quick way to start speaking in messages, is to delete the word I from your vocabulary. So a message is always something that's positive, it's stated as an action, it's or can be an action. There's action messages, sometimes there's just fact messages. But you want to take the I out of it. So I'll give you a quick little example. If you're in a sales meeting and you want to make a point, instead of saying, I have an idea about how we could increase sales by 25%. Instead, you'd want to say something like, we could increase sales by 25% if we did X. So you take the I out of it. What you've just done is you've delivered this as a statement of fact. It's now no longer your opinion. It's something much bigger than that. And you delivered it that way. And now people are going to want to know how, right? So they're going to want to listen, and then they'll start to discuss it. But just by doing that, and you can even use this for compliments and turn your compliments into acknowledgement. So instead of I think you look great, you just say you look great. You have a great sense of style. Great meeting. You're a really good leader. And take the I out of it. It becomes much bigger. So there's more to it than that, but that's a quick way to get started and something that you can walk away with and start practicing today. So even if you say, oh, I really like your sweater, or I really like that blouse, or nice, just take the I out of it and just deliver it as an acknowledgement instead. And that's very powerful. It's much more powerful. Whenever instead of saying, I have a question, just say, tell me more about this. Okay, so just quick little tip there for communication. The other one that people want to know, I prepare for rather than forcing change. Most people don't like change sprung on them. They need time. They need to be conditioned. So you need to say, there's going to be some changes coming up. And tell people as much in advance as you can. The more time that people have to know about changes coming up, the happier they'll be. Most people, about 50%, I would say maybe more than that, really don't enjoy change. They get a new computer. It's like, oh man, now we have to learn this new computer. So you have to give people training, time, advance, let them get their head around it, think about things. The more you can condition and prepare people for changes that are coming, the better. All right, so I'm going to move through quality work. The one that people don't know without a little explanation on this one is my personal standards are very, very high. The standards are the flip side of boundaries. So boundaries are what people can't do to you anymore. It's like people can't smoke around me, or people can't interrupt me. And then the standards are what the conduct you hold yourself to. So for example, I always show up on time. I always tell the truth. I never smoke. So whatever your own personal standards are, you can raise them to be higher than they are. So to take a look at where your standards are now and see what you could do to raise those standards. This is about quality work. It's about being even better than you are now. And one way to do that is to take a look at people you admire and look at what their standards are. What do you admire about that person? Do they have a particular habit or a way of being and something that you could emulate? So take a look at that and see. All right, I'm going to whiz through to take initiative. We have on this one, I think the ones that most often scare people are this one about taking a risk. Taking out insurance when I take a risk, I'm not foolish. I take at least one big risk a week. No, you don't need to necessarily take one big risk a week, so that's just a challenge in there. But to start thinking about what risks you might want to take. And again, the insurance is that it's safe to actually take a risk. And again, different companies are different. Some companies are very experimental, and it's like okay to make mistakes, and you can play with things, experiment things. And some of the most successful inventions have been mistakes. The Post-it note is the famous mistake of a glue that wasn't quite sticky enough, and they turned it into the Post-it note. which we now have dotting our desks and computers all over the place around the world. What a wonderful invention that was. But the Post-it note is an example of a mistake. That was a glue that was actually a failure, a failed glue. Didn't really stick quite enough. So they turned that mistake into something else. So some mistakes can actually be wonderful things if you're in a company like 3M that created the Post-it note. If you're in a company that kind of encourages experimentation. Not all companies do that. So again, you need to be aware of how much experimentation you can take. But you're not going to break out of the mold or the corporate. You're not going to be recognized if you don't take some risks. And we, was just doing this one woman. A lot of times, particularly women, tend not to step up to take on a risky situation. They tend to be a bit more risk averse. No, even men can too, but you want to be careful about that because sometimes you just need to step out and go for something. Maybe taking a risk might be asking for a raise, and you're really afraid to do that, but you're going to take a risk and do that. Maybe and make your case. So actually we had a couple of questions about how do you ask for a raise, and the key thing for asking for a raise is you should have mapped out ahead of time. Of course, you've been doing all the things on these checklists, so you're going to be a model employee. You're going to be managing up. You're going to have firm boundaries now. So you're going to be more attractive. Your needs will be met, so you're more likely to be promoted anyway. And you've got your boundaries. That makes a big difference in terms of using that communication model and the boundaries and getting your needs met. Again, much more attractive, much more likely to get a raise if you have those things in place than if you don't. So now when you take a risk, you have a good foundation. So basically I'd say get your foundation set up first, get nice and strong, get all that sorted out, then start asking for a raise. So I wouldn't ask for a raise until you've done some of the needs work first and got your boundaries in place. And you want to start building up for that raise by demonstrating your value to the company. So if you can demonstrate that you've helped the bottom line grow, that you've done something to make this company more successful, you've got to show that you're worth it. Because if you're a valuable employee who improves the whole company as a whole and improves the bottom line, and usually it's about the bottom line, what kind of money have you saved for the company? Maybe you've come up with something that saved money for the company, or you've made money for the company. So you do need to stand out. Otherwise, you're not likely to get a raise. And if you do get a raise, it might be just a regular, ordinary raise, kind of a cost of living increase. So if you really want to get a serious raise, you need to stand out. You need to do something bold. You're going to have to take action and come up with something that would really make a difference to this company. So that means looking at the company as a whole and what can you do to make it better. Maybe you have some ideas and you could work on an extra project. So that could be the thing that you need to make a case for and say, this is why I deserve a raise. We had somebody who said they haven't gotten a raise in 5 years, and they've been told no for 5 years. And it's like, whoa, all right. First of all, are you overpaid? First thing I would want to find out, why haven't you gotten a raise in 5 years? That seems a bit much. Are you getting more than the industry standard or less? Do you know what you're worth on the open market? So get out there. Use Morgan McKinley to get out there and find out what you're worth. Get some recruiters working for you. Find out what you're worth on the open market. Because if you're overpaid for your job, then that might explain why you're not getting a raise. If that's not the case, you need to make some extra value of why you're worth more. Maybe you've done an extra project and it's improved the bottom line by this much. So you've got to make your case and show why you're worth it. Right? So if you haven't gotten a raise, I'd say the other thing is maybe you've gotten pigeonholed or stuck and you need to leap forward and do something different, which might mean changing jobs. So, don't be afraid to do that. If people stay in one company for a long time, and these are just kind of the way things work in corporations, you get pegged. You get pegged at a certain salary, and you're going to get those incremental increases. Unless you do something rather extraordinary, you're going to be in the system. And the only way to get a massive jump forward, you're not likely to be able to get a massive jump within the same company, not a big company. Because they've got these schedules, HR has it all under control. Everybody has to get so much of an increase. It's all doled out. And unless you're on an incentive thing, maybe you're in sales where you get a commission or an incentive based based on sales that you've brought in, which would be good. It's hard to get more than the standard. The only way to do that is jump companies. Really, you need to jump around a bit more. So be willing to look for another job, and that might be what you need to do. If you've been 5 years asking for a raise and not getting it and know you're worth it, I would look elsewhere. And at the very least, you can then say, hey, look, I found another job. They are willing to pay me more. And if they say, oh, well, we'll match that, well, then, you have the option to stay. But you've got to wonder about that. I coached a woman to leave one company, she was in the hotel business, and go for another. She said, oh, I've been there with these guys a long time, da-da-da. But they weren't appreciating her, and they didn't value her. And these other guys really did appreciate her, and they showed her. I said, well, ask for a lot of money going in. And this is just a general rule of thumb. Ask for a lot. If you're jumping companies, go for a big leap forward. And they'll appreciate you more. People tend to value the employees they pay well. And she's been in this new company ever since and has been happy for years now at a much, much higher rate than if she'd stayed in her other job out of loyalty. All right. Career path. I said we'd talk a little bit about career path and creating a career path for you. First thing to know about career path is if you think your boss is managing your career, you're in trouble. So you need to have your own destination in mind. And if you don't know where you're going, you're probably not going to get there. So that's something that a lot of times we go to companies thinking that our bosses are going to look after us and nurture us and care for us. And if you're lucky, you will have a boss that's like that. But you shouldn't bank on that. You should have your own plan. So definitely map out, where are you going? What do you need to do to develop yourself and get where you're going in this company? And create your own career path. And if you need to work with human resources to do that, it's worth having a meeting with them potentially about that. But letting your boss know where you want to go, in some cases, can be a good idea. If your boss is supportive and can help you, and make the request for the training and the development that you need. The people who ask for training and development and then get it, and the companies that invest in their employees, they're less likely to fire you if they've invested a lot of money in you. So always be asking for training and development on the side. So, and developing other sides of yourself. It's like, I would like to be a better manager. And certainly if you do get a negative review about something, immediately request a training and development course on that. So if they said you're not communicating well, then sign up for a communication course. So, immediately address that by requesting. So, well, you said that I'm not good at this, so I'd like a course on that. And so from your boss's perspective, they can't really say no. They'd have a hard time saying no if they said this is a problem area for you. And for you, it's good because you're going to learn some new stuff and some new skills, hopefully. And do some research on that. Find out some different options and say, hey, these are the different courses and the different price points, and this is the one I'd like to do, and I've done this research. And show that you're taking charge of your own career path. And that looks proactive. It looks like you're committed to doing well. It looks like you want to get ahead. So, it's doing all the right things. And it'll only help you. Now, there's some more questions I think we have here on the table. Did any others come in while we're...
Yeah, we do actually, Talane. Thank you so much. I love the your response to how we ask for a pay rise. I'm sure we're taking note of that. We have a question for Ursula. She asked, how do you deal with a team member that challenged you in a meeting room rather than in a one-to-one meeting?
So, could you repeat that one time? Just couldn't quite hear.
How do you deal with a team member that challenges you in a team meeting rather than a one-to-one meeting?
Okay, great. So that's a perfect example. So the question was, how do you deal with a team member who's challenging you in front of the team instead of privately? Again, that's a boundary issue, right? So you need to have the boundary that people can't challenge me publicly. They need to do that one-on-one privately. All right, so you're missing the boundary. That's the first thing. It's not their problem, it's your problem. So if you're missing the boundary, you need to go in and talk to that person. So what's the first step? Inform. So after that meeting, you pull that person aside, and in a gentle, neutral tone of voice, you say, I'm sure you're not aware of this, but did you realize that you challenged me publicly in front of the meeting? That made me feel really uncomfortable. I'd appreciate it if you do that privately. Now, that's an inform and request in one, but you may want to do that. So that's an example. You just did inform and request, neutral tone of voice, right after the meeting. Try it. You rarely have to go beyond that. So, it's that simple. It's a boundary issue.
Great, thanks for that, Talane. We have one from Yovita from Singapore, and she asked, how important is it to manage up not just your direct manager, but your manager's boss, or even 3 levels above if you have the opportunity to interact with him or her?
Absolutely important. It means to manage you up as high as you can.
Yes.
And sometimes, and it's really important, if you can create relationships with people higher up in the company, that's great. And one of the ways you can actually do that is to request mentorship. So coaching and mentoring is different. A coach is typically somebody on the outside who works like I do, who comes in and can give you some objective advice on and work with communication skills and help you be successful, and you can run strategies past, well, how would you deal with this? And a mentor is somebody inside the business or in that industry, and they're keenly aware of what's going on in that company. They may be aware of politics and things going on at much higher levels that you may not have access to. So you want to find and solicit and create relationships with people who are higher up who can be your mentors. And they may not be directly in your chain of command, or they might be, but you want to ask people, say, hey, could you mentor me? And then maybe you take them out for lunch, or you meet them for lunch, or a drink after work or something. But you set up an appointment to meet them fairly regularly, or you might have a more casual relationship. Say, hey, can I call you if I have a question about anything? And work to actually find somebody to mentor. And you can do this by saying, I really admire, and people like flattery, I really admire you as a leader, and I admire what you're doing in this company, and I really respect and appreciate the work you've done for this company, and I'd like to be like you, and I'd like to learn from you. Would you be my mentor? Flattery will get you everywhere often. So you could just, and be honest about it. Pick somebody you really honestly admire and say, I really admire you, and this is why. Would you be my mentor? And tell them what your goals are. So that can help you develop relationships with people who are higher up in the company, and that could be very, very valuable. Sometimes they'll be able to tell you things like, oh, no, be careful about developing a relationship with that person. They're bad news. So there may be people in the company who are kind of black sheep, or if you associate yourself with them and then they're actually trying to fire that person and get them out of the company, you're going to be in trouble. And some of these things you wouldn't know, so it's helpful to have that.
Great advice there, Talane. I think we've got just some time, a couple of minutes time, just to answer one last question, if that's okay. We have Mohand, who's from the UK, and he or she asks this question: I feel appreciated that I want to be the master of my own schedule and become more self-sufficient, and need to create a space to do so whilst achieving all my deadlines and deliverables.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and this is probably related to the needs that we talked about before. So somebody who probably has the need for independence. That's a very common need, that you need to be free, independent, or unrestricted. And the need to be independent, people who have that need often are very good at being entrepreneurs in their own business people. I actually have that need myself and left the banking world and was very happy about that. Because of my need for independence, it suits well. But you can try to create more independence in the working place. And the way to do that, again, this could be related to boundaries, is letting your boss know and say, look, I do my best work when very loosely supervised. I like to have kind of my own free domain here. And I'll come to you if I have a problem or whatever, or I'll report to you weekly on my progress or whatever it is. So you need to set up something where they feel secure. So again, it helps to know what your boss's needs are. And if you can identify your own needs, that helps too. But I'm going to guess that's one of your needs, and that it would be worthwhile to have some sort of conversation with your boss about how you might get that met. Does that mean you work from home 1 or 2 days a week so you have some more independence and freedom without interruptions in your schedule? That might be something to negotiate for. Would it be that you kind of are left free rein and you're like, here, you're given the broad brush, here, this is what I need you to accomplish in terms of goals. You do it your own way and I'll leave you to it. And you can tell your boss that's what you need. Different employees need different things. Some employees really like to have very clear structures and actions and expectations spelled out for them. They like the clarity, the structure. They want that. Other people like you really prefer to figure that out yourself and have more free rein and don't want to be told. So again, the boss won't know that. They won't know if you need structure and details and this is what I expect from you, or if you prefer to have a free rein. They won't know that. Everybody's different. So you need to tell them. And that's this part about being direct, telling people what you need to do your best work, and finding a way that works, that your boss will feel secure, and that that you will be confident and you have a relationship with them. And say, look, the moment there's even the slightest problem, I will let you know about it and bring you in. And having that relationship based on trust. So it can be done. Can definitely be done. Good. Well, I think I'll just whiz through some of the resources we have here. The Coach Yourself to Success is 101 tips. Secret Laws of Attraction, we talked about. That has got the whole, and it sounds like a relationship book, there's little hearts here, but it's actually about emotional needs and boundaries. Really, really useful for being successful in your career. And then if you decided you wanted that new career, because you haven't gotten a raise in 5 years, it may be time to get Morgan McKinley to help you out a little bit and take a look at what new career possibilities there are for you. We have a special offer for those who want to change the career. That's the Career Change Coaching Kit, and that is a tool that we talked about, those assessments. This is in those. You can take these two as computerized assessments and find out for yourself what your own personal style is, what your values are, and what your hardwired brain abilities are. So we've got this all organized as a little kit with plenty of audio debrief afterwards explaining what it all means for you. Online coaching, if you're interested in that, we've got coaching online with a special promotion for Morgan McKinley. So you can use the MMCK50 for your promo code and get 50% off. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and then if you want to contact me or our company, we're at info@lifecoach.com. So if we didn't get to your questions today, do feel free to let me know that or let Emma know, and we're more than happy to help you out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Talane. Great timing on that one, and appreciate your top tips today. And we'll definitely hear from you, I'm sure, in the future for our next webinar. So thanks again, everyone, with regards to joining us today. And if you've got any questions, please send them through to us either via Twitter or email us directly.